Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, Week 10, part number 2 with our two-hole hitter here, Teddy Covers. Teddy, welcome in. How you feeling?
Hey, great to be here, Drew. We're excited to talk about a pretty good slate of games this week in college football, a loaded card. We had a bunch of buys last week, not this week.
No, not at all. And we had to add another handicapper. Didn't want to put too much on any one handicapper, so we went from 4 slots to 5 slots. That's what happens with every game on the board. So we got Tony Mejia stepping in next after Teddy Covers. If you're new to Every Game on the Board podcast, we go down hitting every single game on the board. We like to say go to Wager Talk Live odds screen. Those little numbers next to the team name when you go to the college football odds screen, those are the rotation numbers. We're going down in order, numerical order here. Part number 1 was mid-major Matt. Now we got part number 2 here, 341, 342, Oklahoma State, Kansas, down to Ohio State Northwestern, 363, 364. So Teddy, let's start off here. Big 12 action, 3:30 Eastern kick. Oklahoma State at Kansas. We're seeing the Cowboys minus 2-point road favorites off of that horrible loss that I was a part of, unfortunately. 64.5 being the total in Lawrence, Kansas.
Fascinating game and not an easy handicap, to be perfectly honest. I mean, what do we do with Oklahoma State off of that complete no-show at K-State? They were coming off the wild overtime game against TCU and the huge win over Texas Tech and the huge win over Texas, and they came out and laid an egg. The 48-0 final, it wasn't that close. I'll just put it that way. There was nothing that Okie State did on either side of the football last week that was positive in any way, shape, or form. My concern here is the health of Spencer Sanders, who's been taking hits in bunches for the Cowboys, and he certainly wasn't 100% at the tail end of the last game. And behind him is the coach's kid, who I don't necessarily want in any game that they have to win. Whereas Kansas is coming in fresh, rested, and ready, off their bye week. So in theory, it's certainly a Kansas spot. But that momentum the Jayhawks had at the start of the season, where they won their first 5 games, that's come and gone now. The loss to TCU and then the loss to Oklahoma and the loss to Baylor, and each one of them proceeding to get worse. Jalen Daniels, he's not coming back anytime soon. Backup QB, they're still chucking it around, just not as effectively as they were earlier in the season. Kansas, certainly the fresher team. They're certainly capable of pulling off an upset. And if we have anything like the Oklahoma State we saw last week, Kansas will pull off the upset this week. That said, you put these two teams on paper, the Cowboys are the more talented squad. You can understand why they are road chalk in this one in what may well be a solid bounce back spot for them if Sanders is good to go.
Teddy, you bring up coach's kid, Gunnar Gundy is his name, and I agree with you. He hasn't looked that good. But one thing I want to ask you is, did you say coach's kid because it's Gundy's kid and hey, maybe he's getting the job? One thing I want to ask your opinion on, I've noticed a lot of these quarterbacks playing college football, and actually some of them into the NFL, when their high school football coach is their dad, a lot of them are good at quarterback for some reason when they come in. Have you noticed that?
Sure, and it makes a ton of sense. I hope Isaac doesn't do this for a living, but Isaac is growing up, and my kid's growing up in a household where every day, there's games on, and we're talking about sports betting, and it's a part of his mentality, and he's going to grow up with that. And if that's what he decides to do, then he'll do it. We look at Jeff Michaels, Ralph's kid, who's is working his way into being a solid handicapper. The point being is that when you're around something all the time as a kid, of course it's gonna influence you and have an effect on you, and I think it's certainly a positive sign. But the coach's kid is the backup quarterback. He's the backup for a reason. You know what I mean? You just tap the brakes a little bit in those situations. Just like when the coach's kid becomes the offensive coordinator, it hasn't really worked out that well for Iowa either. In that regard, or some of the other. You worry about some of the nepotism stuff. You do.
Sure. Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring that up. I have noticed that, a lot of these quarterbacks that come into college football, sometimes they get the call up and it's like, oh yeah, his high school football coach was his dad. And I've seen a correlation there with them stepping in and playing pretty well. And it makes total sense. They're around it their whole life. So live it, eat it, breathe it. Next game up, we got AAC action here, 4:00 Eastern, 343, 344. Navy, Cincinnati here, Teddy. Bearcats -19, as high as -20 out there. 46.5 being the total. A tough handicap to a tricky handicap here, Teddy. Cincinnati off the loss, now going up against the military academy. I don't know. Would you like anything here?
Cincinnati off a rare loss and a
Mhm.
game in which they were in, and then it got away from them late. Look, last year this was a touchdown game. Navy's defense held Cincinnati to 271 total yards in that contest. 27-20 final. Navy plus 28.5 in that game. Never in doubt, because Cincinnati didn't score 28.5 in that contest. Now, obviously, we're talking about a different situation this year. The point spread is a good notch or two lower, but Cincy coming off that loss, it's not like the Bearcats' offense has been good this year. All right, Cincy's defense is good. Their offense has been hit or miss. The quarterback play hasn't been great. They're not covering point spreads. The last point spread they covered came back in September. They've been an overvalued commodity, and they've been an under machine, 4 straight unders for the Bearcats in their last 4 ball games. Certainly, you look at Cincinnati's strength. They rush the passer very well. They defend the pass very well. Oops, Navy doesn't do either of those. Navy's not going to be back there chucking it. Navy's going to be burning clock, running the triple option. It's what they do. So the lean here is certainly towards the under. I don't think we're going to see points in bunches in this one. And I think the price is a little bit high to expect a bounce back from Cincinnati this week. If I'm playing, I'd look towards the dog.
Yeah, 40.5 down to 46 now. So the market going where you were saying, Teddy, towards that under. Staying in the AAC. Up next, South Florida, the Bulls, all of a sudden playing better football, staying within some numbers. -3.5, -4. They're going on the road now. Kind of a tough trip here from Tampa to Philadelphia. 51 being the total. We're talking South Florida at Temple here, Teddy.
Well, we got the offense that can't score against a defense that can't stop anybody. I mean, yes, South Florida has played better. They have covered a couple of numbers, but it's all just the offense has been able to move the football. The offense couldn't move the football earlier in the year, and they got bombed. But, this is a defense that's given up 31, 41, 48, 28, 45, and 42 in their last 6 games, all losses. So we're not talking about a team that has any semblance of confidence right now. They've been losing for the last 2 years. And yet they're road chalk here, which tells you what the markets think of Temple right now. And not to road chalk a point or two, they're laying more than a field goal in this game, 3.5, 4, just about everywhere, because Temple can't score. I mean, they literally, I haven't seen this offense work in any game this season. They're able to hang around when the defense is able to hang around, like it did last week against Navy, a team with no playmakers. Those are the games that Temple can hang, but they can't score against anyone. The best offensive performance of the season, UMass? It's not been pretty on the offensive side of the football for Temple. So this is a game in which I don't know what to do. Does a bad offense move the ball against a bad defense? I don't know. It's an easy game for me to pass.
Teddy, we got Minnesota and Nebraska up next, kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern kick here. Golden Gophers -16-point road favorites, 46 being the total. Nebraska hasn't been good, but Minnesota, a little bit of rarefied air here, Teddy. What are you liking in the Big Ten?
Yeah, let's call this the I'm disappointed in this point spread game of the week, because I was hoping to lay less of a price with this than Minnesota. But that's what the price is, and that's going to keep me off the Gophers. And Minnesota's not built to win games by 3 touchdowns. They want to run the football. Mo Ibrahim should be able to run the football here. Tanner Morgan's back at QB, but this is not a team that's going to chuck the ball up and down the field. That's not their game plan. And that's not what they're best at. They're a solid defensive squad, not spectacular, but solid. And then, you look at some of the results for this season, their numbers are great. When you look at them in Big Ten play, not as good, but they had the game against Colorado and New Mexico State and Western Illinois to open the season to make their numbers look outstanding. Nonetheless, they are a solid defensive team. Nebraska, look, I said it last week, catch a ticket with Illinois against Nebraska for the clients. We're saying that, Scott Frost, okay, the problem is not Scott Frost. The problem is that there's no talent on either side of the football and you can blame the coach for not being able to recruit. Okay, fine. The 6 coaches before him couldn't recruit either then. Nebraska just isn't getting the talent that they did. And you watch them play against Illinois last week, it was hopeless. All right, the offense is not going to move the football against any good defense. The defense is not going to stop any good offense. Now, we've seen at times this year the defense has stepped up and played hard. maybe we see that here. But, in terms of a home field edge, there's not much of a home field edge for the Huskers in Lincoln these days. Unfortunately, the price is a little bit high. The markets are right there with me. And that takes the value out of the Minnesota side. So not a game I'm going to play.
2:00 Eastern kick for the next one. Moving our way down. Rotation number 349350. Marshall Thundering Herd at Old Dominion here. The Monarchs -3 pretty much across the board. A little juice on that 3 at some shops looking at the Wager Talk live odds screen. But Marshall, field goal favorite on the road here, Teddy. 46.5 being the total.
Well, this is another game between one team with an offense and one team with a defense. Marshall's defense has been really good.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, consider they've been an under machine, 5 straight unders for Marshall, 4 of them by double digit. Actually, all 5. The one came by 9.5/10 points. They've been flying under the total in recent ball games. Defensively, Marshall's been at or near the top of the conference in recent seasons. That's a solid defense. And we've seen it more than once this year where they've taken some pretty good offenses and shut them down. They did it against James Madison. They did it against Coastal Carolina last week. That being said, Marshall is not going to march up and down the field and put up points in bunches. That's not how they're built. That's not what the team MO is. They want to win low-scoring ball games because the offense is very, very limited. ODU has shown us signs offensively this year. Not the last 2 weeks, though. The last week in particular, held under 300 yards against Georgia State, beat by 2 touchdowns in a game where they were supposed to be competitive, just like the week before against Georgia Southern, where the offense didn't click, the defense didn't click. That Coastal Carolina win that I was so impressed with, I was watching that game back on October 15th. They haven't looked anything like that team since. So that may well, at this stage, you have to look at it as a one-off and not a program moving in the right direction. In which case, if it's a one-off, we can understand why Marshall is the road favorite here. They have the significantly better defense.
Let's head to an interesting handicap here. Liberty at Arkansas, 4:00 in Fayetteville. We got a 2-touchdown favorite. That's the Arkansas Razorbacks. -13.5 is available. 63 the total here, Teddy.
I mean, the markets are telling you that we can expect Arkansas to be flat this week. And Arkansas is in the middle of an Auburn LSU sandwich with Ole Miss on deck, and we might have Liberty in between. This is a win the game, and they're not looking for style points. They're coming off a huge victory, a huge national TV win and cover on the heels of another one, before the bye week at BYU with another big win and cover. I worry about the Hogs mentality in this one. And you look at Liberty, I went back and looked at something like they've been playing these type of games in recent seasons pretty consistently. We can go back 2019 under Freeze. They had a handful of these. 2020, they go to Syracuse mid-season and win straight up. They go to Virginia Tech mid-season as 17-point dogs and win straight up. They go to NC State late season and lose by only a point, cover the spread. Last year at Ole Miss, again, right around this time of year, in a spot where the Rebels were coming off an SEC game and with an SEC game on deck, and Liberty hung within this point spread in that ball game against an Ole Miss team that was pretty explosive offensively. So they've shown the ability to hang tough in matchups like this. And the game against BYU, look, I may have, there are other games I've been very wrong on in college football this year. But I was going to say, I don't know that I was more wrong than playing BYU as -7 favorites at Liberty 2 weeks ago. That game was competitive early, and I thought Liberty would be outclassed at the line of scrimmage against the big kids who've been away on missions and 23, 24-year-old linemen, and I thought Liberty was going to get pushed around. And it was the exact opposite of that. Liberty was the team that controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. Arkansas is a big team like BYU. They were bigger than BYU when these two teams just met up. Liberty can handle the Cougs. Maybe they can handle the Razorbacks. Certainly from a point spread perspective. Again, when it's sitting at 13.5 everywhere, mostly everywhere, the markets are telling you beware the flat spot for the Razorbacks, and I don't disagree with that.
Good point there. Guys, follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers for some more good points. Also, check him out, Wager Talk and sportsmemo.com. Off of a 2-0 last night and winning weekend in college football. Every play since February, 255 and 206. That's 55% for over 120% profit on those picks going all the way back to February, guys. So long-term in the black. Teddy covers wagertalksportsmemo.com right here on the Every Game on the Board podcast. Michigan State and Illinois up next, Teddy, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific kick. 41.5 being the total, minus 16.5. That's the Illini in Champaign.
Yeah, the markets are expecting a no-show here from Michigan State. Maybe they get it. I mean, Sparty, they've had a rough season. Last week's game in particular was as ugly as it gets against the Wolverines, where the offense just couldn't move the football at the end of the game. What's Mel Tucker spent it now? 8 guys from that team. This could easily be a hangover game for the Spartans, who have, lost and failed to cover now 5 of their last 6. You look at them on the road this year, non-competitive at Michigan. They were never in the game at Maryland. They were never in the game at Washington. They've not yet played a good road game this season. I want no part of Michigan State this week. That said, look, Illinois sure feels like the team that's going to come out of the Big Ten West this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that defense is no freaking joke. All right. I've seen them shut down everybody in every different way. You can't pass against them. You can't run against them. When they get pushed around, they got pushed around early a little bit in Nebraska last week, and boy, they stepped up big. Offensively, this team's not going to make a whole lot of big plays, and that makes me concerned in this point spread range. Again, we're laying, you got to win by 3 scores here, and that's not what Illinois is meant to do, built to do. That being said, they beat Virginia by 3 scores. They beat Chattanooga by 3 scores. They beat Wisconsin by 3 scores. They beat Nebraska last week by 3 scores. Maybe they can win this one as well. I certainly don't want the dog, but they may have priced me out of the favorite.
Staying in the Big Ten, 355-356, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific kick here. Heading to Camp Randall, Maryland and Wisconsin, Teddy. We're seeing the Badgers, minus 5-point home favorites, 50 being the total. They're going to be jumping around here in Whiskey?
So the number looks a little short, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Noticeably short, perhaps. Now, Maryland is coming in with extra time, off back-to-back wins. They're 6-2 this season. And the losses by 2 points to Purdue, by a touchdown to Michigan, nothing to be shameful of either one. In the Purdue game, if memory serves correct, they were leading that game and gave a late touchdown to lose. That was a wild last 2 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember watching it. Mm-hmm. But, they've been in every game. They're competitive. The best Maryland team by far Loxley's had. The extra time off the bye helps Tagovailoa be healthy for this week. He's supposed to be good to go. But when you picture Maryland lining up against Wisconsin at Camp Randall, you picture the Badgers, who've had a rough season, but have bounced back from that. They had an overtime loss to Michigan State. They had the blowout win over Northwestern. They had a win over Purdue. And they, too, are coming off a bye. So they've salvaged their season. They can come out and play well down the stretch and still do something this year. And I just when I'm picturing these two teams in my mind, I'm picturing Wisconsin pummeling Maryland at the line of scrimmage. That said, if Maryland is capable of making some big plays in the passing game, like they've done all year, that team's loaded with playmakers. Wisconsin has no chance to catch up. They don't have playmakers. They have no passing game. The Badgers down 2 touchdowns, they lose. So this is one that you might be interested in live betting. With Maryland's making plays downfield, maybe you bet Maryland, even though you're not getting the best of the number. Wisconsin dominating the line of scrimmage and controlling the flow, maybe bet the Badgers, even though, again, you're not going to be betting the best of the number, but you'll have an idea of how these two teams play out. That, to me, that makes more sense than trying to pick which of the 2 scenarios are going to play out here pre-kickoff. I don't know, and I could see either one coming to fruition. I can see the Badgers blowing them up front. I can see Maryland making some big plays on the other side and forcing the Badgers to come from behind. And that's not what they're built to do.
I like the analysis, Teddy. Yeah, that should be a fun one there in Camp Randall. Teddy, next game up, heading to the Big 12 here. Texas and Kansas State, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific kick here in the Little Apple. Kansas State off of that big win over Oklahoma State, 48-0 with their backup quarterback, by the way. Texas minus 2.5-point road favorites, 54.5 being the total.
Yeah. Will Howard comes in and the offense runs better than it ever did under Adrian Martinez.
Yeah.
Surprise. And I'm being facetious. Martinez was just he cost me more than one bet during his time with the Cornhuskers. I'll never forgive the guy. But he has played well under Kleeman, like everyone plays well under Kleeman. Look, that's a well-coached team. And we saw that again last week. Now, of course, Kansas State's coming off as big a win as they're ever going to have, 48-0 over a top 10 Oklahoma State team, fat and happy, all of that. Not really, not off the one win. Whereas Texas is coming off the bad loss to Oklahoma State, in which Ewers made a whole bunch of mistakes, and then a bye week. Advantage Longhorns. And the markets are telling us that. That's why Texas is chalk in this game. That's why the early money has come towards Texas. You grade at the personnel of these two teams, Texas is the edges on both sides of the football. What they haven't had is consistent quarterback play. It's coming on. That's what you expect with young QBs. But I'll tell you what, the markets love this Ewers kid. They really do. And from a defensive standpoint, I think they bring every bit as much to the table, if not more, than K-State. From a situational standpoint, you like Texas. But the markets, again, they've been, I'm not going to say infatuated with Ewers, but they've certainly, every time you hear his name, all of a sudden it's money coming on Texas. Money coming on Texas. Sark's 10-10 with the Longhorns. This has not been an overachieving team. I'm not convinced they'll be an overachieving team in this one, although it's not a game I expect to bet.
Staying in the Big 12, Teddy, Baylor and Oklahoma, 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, kicking this one. 61 being the total. Sooners, -3 in the hook, home favorites in Norman. I don't know, Teddy. I think the dog in the Bears is barking a little bit here. I have him circled. You liking anything Baylor and Oklahoma?
Yeah, I don't want the favorite here. I mean, Oklahoma saved their season because they beat Iowa State, who's winless in the Big 12. And they gained 332 yards in the process. It wasn't like they were marching the ball up and down the field. No, I guess they saved their season when they beat Kansas. They gave up 42 points in that game. Oklahoma's not that good. Okay, when you get to November and you start looking back at the coaching changes last offseason and what makes sense and what didn't make sense, and Lincoln Riley left town because it was the better move for him to make. I understand that Oklahoma was competing for national championships while he was there. In theory, they weren't. They were competing for a spot in the national championship picture, but they were never going to get over the hump. And I think Riley saw what this year looked like and said, maybe we should go somewhere else. I want no part of Oklahoma laying this 3.5. I'm with you on that. All Baylor's done under Aranda is be tough as nails and find ways to win close games. All right. And they've done that really consistently. Now, they did have the loss, that tight loss at West Virginia earlier this year where they kind of blew the game.
Quarterback went down.
Yeah, I know. Baylor is tough. All right. They're a tough team. They're a physical team at the line of scrimmage. These are the types of teams that Texas doesn't always succeed against, that hasn't in recent years, or that Oklahoma, I should say, has succeeded against. And look, we've seen a very competitive series. Last year, Baylor won 27-14, the meeting before in 2020. Oklahoma won 27-14. The meeting before that in 2019 went to overtime. This game, too, to me, feels like if I'm catching more than a field goal, I could only look at the Bears side.
2 games left here, guys. SEC and Big Ten. We got 12 noon Eastern heading to the SEC. 3-6-1, 3-6-2, Kentucky and Missouri. We're seeing the Wildcats, Teddy, anywhere from -1 to -1.5 right now as the short road favorite. 40.5 being the total. Kentucky, Missouri, SEC East here, Teddy covers.
Now, all of a sudden, Kentucky's lost 3 of their last 4. And the losses, they scored 19, 14, and 6 points. All right, the only win in between when Mississippi State came to town. That's a concern for me. They've been playing under, big time unders, 6 unders the last 7 ball games. And that is a large part because the offense isn't working. All right, now they're coming off a bad loss to Tennessee. Obviously, it was a game that they had circled and a game that they were not competitive in. Missouri, I'll tell you what, I watched the South Carolina game last week. Missouri was a better team. I watched the game against Florida. Missouri was right in that game. I watched them lose to Auburn. Missouri was a better team in that game. They took Georgia to the wire on this field earlier this year. One would expect points to be at a premium in this contest. We're talking about 2 teams, both of whom are better defensively than offensively right now. But I can't lay a price with Kentucky in this spot. Missouri have back-to-back wins, a coach on the hot seat, and a team that kind of underachieved early. Don't know why I would look in this one, Missouri and the under. But, of course, this total has already been bet down and has been bet down more now, 40.5. Probably going to price me out of the under, but I don't expect points in bunches in this one.
Teddy, before we get to Ohio State Northwestern, the college football playoff committee rankings came out last night. Do you care about them? Did you watch them? Did you see them? Do you agree with them? Any thoughts on that?
So not only did I not watch them, not only did I not read any articles to tell me who the college football playoff has in, I didn't click on any of the links. I don't care. Not even a little bit. It is not a factor to use in your handicapping. It is not a factor that's going to give you any edge in any way. At the end of the year, they're going to give us who's going to be in the playoffs, and then we'll have point spreads for those teams, and we can handicap it. But if you're trying to think about this is what you do when it comes to national championship picture. This stage of the season is bet against the teams that have to win to get there. Bet against anyone that must win. I don't know. That's for fans. It's not for bettors.
Okay. Like it. Yeah. When they give you point spreads, that's what you're about. Teddy covers, ladies and gentlemen. Last game here, 363, 364, 12 noon Eastern, Ohio State at Northwestern. Almost something, only Buckeye fans and sports bettors can love here, Teddy. Minus 38 on the road, 57.5 being the total. Any interest here in outside of Chicago?
Oh, yeah. This is my most confident play. This is the one we're going to talk about.
All right.
Lay it, dude. Just lay it. Okay. In Northwestern is non-competitive at this stage. We've seen it pretty clearly. The Pat Fitzgerald era is not ending well. They had the 2020 year where they stole a couple wins, against team, at 2020. I'm telling you, throw out everything from 2020. It's all random. It is. It really is. And at this stage, you don't remember which team was missing 46 players of their two deep and which one weren't. But if you throw out 2020, I think you'll have a better assessment of the trajectories of various programs, whereas 2020 kind of looks and stands out in a different way, which wasn't real. Wasn't real then, and it's not real now.
Okay.
In 2019, Northwestern went 3-9. In 2021, Northwestern went 3-9. This year, they won on opening day. They haven't won since. All right, this is a program that is going south. And I've talked about it, I think, on this show a couple of times, what's going on with Northwestern. The name, image, likeness stuff, the NIL, Northwestern has no money, no program, no nothing. So anyone that can make any money is going somewhere else. All right. When it comes to transfer, Northwestern getting killed in the transfer portal. Their top recruits are leaving town because the program stinks and they're getting opportunities elsewhere. So the talent level isn't there. The recruiting isn't there. And the team stinks. There's no confidence. Like when Northwestern has a good team, they dig deep. I've seen some efforts from Fitzgerald at getting those teams to play above their heads. This year's team won on opening day. They haven't won since. They've lost their last 7. There's no dig deep for Northwestern right now. They're taking the punch and getting out of town. Ohio State, maybe they're flat. Okay, they're coming off a huge win, non-cover. The weather's not supposed to be great. These are all things that says maybe Northwestern can hang within the number, except for the fact that every time Ohio State drops back to pass the football, there's going to be open receivers because the Wildcats don't have the defensive secondary to stop anybody. 38, seems like a lot for this spot in this game. If I'm playing, I'm laying. And I'm playing.
Liking the Buckeyes minus 38. And Teddy, is that the most confident play for the section?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. There we go, guys. Teddy covers most confident play. Ohio State minus the 38. Guys, follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers. Check them out, Wager Talk and sportsmemo.com. 55% win rate. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but since February, long term, guys, that's a winning handicapper there. Not a lot of people doing that in the industry. 2-0 last night off a winning weekend in college football. Obviously knows his college football here, guys. So check them out, wagertalksportsmemo.com, right here on the Every Game on the Board podcast as well. Teddy, any final thoughts before we shut this down?
Yeah, man. So September was a great month across sports and in college football. October stunk. All right, there's no sugarcoating it. I did not do my job well. Last night, calendar November, I went 2-0. We won last weekend in college football. I think I've turned the corner, and I expect there's a good handful of games in the card this week that stand out to me. So I expect to win more than usual, perhaps this Saturday. I do like the looks of this college football card. So if you want to get on board, again, just check out the website at Wager Talk and or sportsmemo.com.
Heading up direction here, guys. Teddy covers. All right, he'll be back next week. We'll be right back with Tony Mahian, part number 3 of the Every Game on the Board podcast. Smash that like button, cash those tickets.